we go. So in theory, this is live streaming,
Great. Love it.
but I'm not seeing where it's live streaming to.
Mhm.
So we're going to hit record, and it might be that this goes up later.
Mhm. Great. We
And
are recording.
we
Mhm.
are recording. So
Mhm.
today I have with me the lovely Irisanya Moon,
Mhm.
who is author, priestess, reclaiming witch, all of the lovely, lovely things. I had thought through how I was going to introduce you. There are more tidy
Mhm.
text, tidy words
Mhm.
below this video, but uh, luckily for everyone, or not luckily for everyone, I have been distracted by the live streaming debacle.
As
So,
one does. Mhm.
yeah. So this is a Crimson Coven chat or a Crimson chat. I'm still working out the names, quite how I want to phrase those things. Where we host as the Crimson Coven Collective, which is a space for
Mhm.
people to come and discuss sacred
Mhm.
sexuality, divine love, and embodied magic.
Mhm.
And about once a month, I'm inviting a guest on to come and speak about those topics. So, Irisanya Moon is the author of several books, including
Mhm.
Aphrodite.
Mhm. Yes.
So, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about yourself
Yeah.
while I mute myself and click some more buttons.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a live stream slash Zoom. Hi, folks. I'm Irisanya Moon. My pronouns are she and they. I am currently situated on the land of the Wapo, the Great Rancheria, the Southern Pomo, and the Coast Miwok people, Santa Rosa, California, USA. Like Halo said, author, witch, priestess. I teach internationally. I am a poet. I'm an initiate in the reclaiming witchcraft tradition, and I do death work and all of the things. Sometimes I like to say when I talk about my bio that I'm also a love spell that's emerging. I have written, yes, several books and a few more on their way out. And a lot of my work, though, right now centers and focuses on Aphrodite and the idea that life is a love spell, and also that heart magic is something that can not only help us personally, but can also be helpful collectively in our healing and our activism and all the ways in which we encounter life. So that's a summary of me, but I also have a website that says way more than that.
So I like immediately on that. I really want you to talk about how you are a love spell,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. Mhm. How does that work? So here's the thing. I believe that we all are. We are all like a combination, conjuration of intention towards the things that we desire, the things that we find pleasurable. We seek those out. And in that ongoing conversation with ourselves and with others and with the world around us, we are creating that intention, we are creating that spell, and the actions that we take forward in that activates the spell, brings energy to it or doesn't. And so for me personally, I feel like my life has been this slow, and I didn't quite catch it, um, recognition of that. So a recognition of the things that I really care about, the things that I want to devote my attention to, and also the energy that I might use to fuel those different things in my life. So for me, those are all the ingredients of a love spell. And also our bodies are beautiful containers of ingredients for love spells. And so I feel that if we can stop separating that and having like a love spell be outside of us, I think that it also empowers us and allows us to see our role in our own desire, awakening, empowerment, et cetera, et cetera.
And I love that thing about not seeing it as outside of ourselves and actually bringing it in and where we're. It's kind of that, like, this for me sounds like it really ties in with the whole thing about making your whole life an act of magic. Where I heard the story of True Thomas a long time ago, and began working with that. And if you don't know it, Thomas the Rhymer,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, went away, was taken away by the Fairy Queen, served her for 7 years, and his payment was the tongue that cannot lie. And so there's that thing about, well, is the lack of lying prophecy, or is it a spell? If you speak about the future,
right,
and you speak about the world, are you prophesying? Are you telling the truth of what is and what is going to be, or are you speaking it into reality? And so I decided that every word was a spell.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you take the word spell, and that kind of, I think that a lot of people have said that, spelling is, using words, and all the words that we use are, they are informing our experience and how other people perceive us and what happens and what doesn't happen, what we say and what we don't say. So I believe that we're all just acts of magic, and we're just spells, just continuously doing our things. And the more we can be intentional about it, I think the more we start to see outside align with inside, or inside start to align with outside. And I know that's very binary, so there's more to that, but that's the way I can easily describe it.
I think that's absolutely true. I'm going to pause us just there for a second. I'm going to stop the live stream that we've got, and I'm going to start it again in the hopes that will send it to the right place. And then I have a question to you about what you've just said. So, in fact, I'll leave myself unmuted. I'm not going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop the live stream. For us to pop up elsewhere. Save. Okay, so hopefully, if I just do this live on YouTube, I love this technology. I love what's possible.
And could it just be one button? Yes.
Yeah. There's this weird thing where you have to tell it exactly where it is you want it to be, and so you set up the space that it's going to be, and if you and tell it I wanted it to be in the test space, and then it appeared in, and I did that by mistake rather than sending it to the one. So
our love spell is huge and uncontainable. It is.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like magic.
Yeah.
Now, in theory, hello world. No, it is. There we go. Right. So let's mute that. It is now streaming to elsewhere. So what I'm going to do is hit the share button, copy that link, and apologize to the people who have turned up for the actual video. There we go. Right. Let's let go of that. Let go of that.
All good.
That is streaming. Great. I can see you on YouTube.
Hi. Hi, folks.
And we are also recording here. So if it all goes horribly wrong, there will be a recording.
We got it. It's all good. I'm great. This is the way love is too. It's confusing, risky, and often we stumble. And so this is really right on track.
It really is. So one of the things, what you were just talking about,
Mhm.
was that thing about each of us being an act of magic.
Mhm.
And not just our lives as an act of magic, but us ourselves an act of magic.
Mhm.
We are love spells unfolding.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there's two questions there. The first one is, what in this instance do you mean by a love spell?
Mhm. Yeah.
And the other one is, how does that tie into the fact that we are embodied? Like, what
Mhm.
role for you does the body play in this love spell, in this act of magic?
Yes. So first things first, how is it a love spell? How am I defining that?
Mm.
I define that as calling forward or calling towards that which I desire. Because I think a lot of times when folks say love spell, they have a very clear image about what that looks like. And I like to expand that out a bit. You know, if you look at all the Greek words for love, there's a whole bunch of different versions of things, right? And it's not just romantic love, it's also love of family and love of service, things like that. So for me, it is calling forward that which I desire, and that which I want, even if it doesn't have like a reason or a purpose or, capitalism involved and tangled up in it. And in terms of embodiment with this whole thing, I think that that ties in a bit more with like, that sort of expands out into the life as a love spell, that life and the way in which my body interacts with life around me is that embodiment. It is how I engage with things. It's how I engage with another. It is how my body changes and feels and shows and expresses different forms of love. It is, for me, it's all heart, right? I mean, I think that that's probably the most thing that relates most to the embodiment is this heart that beats and beats and beats, because that's what it does. I think that's what love does. Love exists and is something we seek because that's what we do and that's what is there. And we love it, even though we go for things that we love, even though we know we're going to lose them, even though we know that it's a risk. And so that embodiment for me is that ongoing also conversation about how my body interacts and feels in these different phases. You know, the nervousness, the love bubble, the sort of the risk of reaching forward for something. How do I support my body and also listen to my body to see what is true for me?
So there's that piece about connection and conversation.
Mhm. Always. I think that one of the things that's really important to me in any of these conversations, Aphrodite or not, is that for me, I have conversations about relationship. I have conversations about how do I relate to things versus what those things are. For example, when you had Raymond Edgewalker on and talking about Iron Pentacle, I'm thinking about, how do I engage and have relationships with those points versus looking at each of those things as a distinct entity, because my relationship can change a lot and it feels easier to do that than it is to change the definition of something, right? So I always think about this as relationship, like how am I relating to my body? How am I relating to whatever I desire? How can I work on that relationship? How can I strengthen it? And does it still work for me? So, and a myriad of other things, because relationships are, a whole thing, right?
Do you find then that the that sort of separates those things out
Mhm.
from you by, like, saying
Mhm.
my relation in relationship to something? Does that cause more separation, or over
For
that?
me, for me, it's more engagement because I think it would be easy to say that. And I think it would actually be possible to do that. But I think when I talk about when I'm in relationship to something, I am in this. I have to be a part of this in order to work because relating, well, I'm sure it can be one way. A strong relationship is not. It is reciprocal, it is
Mm-hmm.
showing up, it's consistency. For me, I actually feel like that's more buy-in if I have to be in relationship or I want to be in relationship with something. Yeah.
So it's more active and more
I
engaged.
think it's more active for me. I think that I
Okay.
can
So
understand
are
why it
there?
might not. Mhm.
Oh, for me, very much that piece about being in relationship with something is about bringing it closer.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I know I've heard other people talk about these things and going, well, if I talk about it as something, I can't have a relationship with myself because I am myself and it's not a separate thing. And I'm like, well, you accept that you can, because a
Yeah,
relationship is an activity. Relationship is a verb.
right. It's not just a noun, right? And I think slash wonder if that is good old capitalism, right? Sort of saying like that's a thing that you obtain versus something that you interact with, right? It's something that you secure, that you define, that you um, can very easily put into a box and say, this is relationship and this isn't, right? So I think that, as I always say, and I think almost every presentation, it's like, there's capitalism again in the hood and the mask, and like in Scooby-Doo, it's always capitalism in the end,
Yes, if
right?
it wasn't for
Always.
those pesky
It
kids.
always with that pesky capitalist. Yeah, I think that that's part of it. And I think it's hard to separate those two. It's hard to, or it can be challenging to think of relationship or love or anything as something that just exists when we're told stories about how it is conditional, how it is consumable. I think it's tricky, in culture. And so I also think that's part of the dance of this love spell. Like, keep thinking about, what do I desire? And how do I come back to it? How do I, refine it? How do I dance with that?
So how has your relationship with Aphrodite fed into and supported that? And how has that supported her, do you feel?
Mhm. So, yeah, I often tell this story, and because I always start off with this, because some people, I've worked with Aphrodite long enough for folks to think like that seems like a really natural relationship. I didn't want to work with her, to be perfectly fair. I just didn't. I thought she was, kind of, I don't want to say ditzy, but I would say like just kind of too puffy and like just give me all the, the dark goddesses and the tough conditions and all that stuff. But when I realized that she's like the initiator, and she's also the one who challenges me to think about how I am in relationship to love and for myself and for others, that is really hard work. And I would say some of the hardest work. So my relationship with Aphrodite evolves all the time. One of the things I say about being in relationship to any deity is that I look at it like a human relationship. I don't look at it as though there is a hierarchy. So we're divine. And in that divinity, I do like recognize, offer things to her, because I know that those are things that, or at least over time, I've come to know they're things that she likes, because that's what I would do for any person I really like. I would want to offer you things that you might find beautiful or comforting or anything like that. But also, it's really getting to know that being, through books, but also through sitting with them and listening and asking questions and being consistent, showing up, making the time, looking into things when it doesn't quite work or it feels kind of weird. And in terms of the reciprocation in that, I feel that the gods, in the ways that we relate to them, in the ways that I relate to them at least, keep them alive. I think that the ways in which different worship of different deities changes and is different through different people allows those stories to continue. If there was only one kind of relationship for a deity, at some point that would probably drop off. So when you have people who really look for authentic relationships, I think that gives the deity, and Aphrodite especially, I don't think she's going anywhere, but in case, it offers to her more perspectives and more eyes. And it offers more, we don't, attention, right? And so she seems to be a being that likes that. But I think that, yeah, I think that her, I don't want to say message, but like her kind of like overarching theme of love gets to be expanded. And for me, that feels like it's a pretty good trade-off there for her to continue to be admired and adored, and also become like a guiding light in society, or a sort of I intertwine hope and love a lot, allows for the possibility of hope and for continuing to love beyond reason.
Well, there's a phrase, love beyond reason.
It's a big one for me. It's a big one. It is because, like I said before, one of the things that I think is just so important to remember in all this, and that's one of the reasons that makes Aphrodite so appealing to me, and I think appealing to a lot of folks, is this idea that if she's not just about love, first of all, but this tends to be a big thing. Love is the thing that you will never get to hold on to, ever. It is always going to end, no matter if it ends in this lifetime or when you die. Like, you never get to hold on to anything. It's all finite and it's a risk. And yet we keep doing it and we keep showing up, and we do it even though we know, maybe not in the front of our minds, that we're going to lose it, that we're going to hurt, we're going to miss this being or purpose or thing. And we keep doing it. So I believe that's beyond reason to a certain extent. Why do we keep showing up? Because it really is, I think, what renews us and restores us and creates, I guess, a kind of order out of chaos.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Love it without reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's a piece in some of the philosophy that I was studying for my PhD, and it's about the way in which the gods appear with their they appear with the world that they are.
Yes.
So this is it was Heidegger, Martin Heidegger was writing about it. Slightly problematic historically, but
so many of them, yes.
Yeah. I could go into that, but I'm not going to. But he wrote some really wonderful stuff about the way in which the divine and the different deities, and he particularly was fascinated with ancient Greek deities. And he'd say that when Dionysus appears, when Dionysus turns up, Dionysus's world happens at the same time as Dionysus. And the same time as Dionysus' symbols, and so he was mostly talking about Apollo and Dionysus, but the other deities are the same. So actually in my PhD I was writing about philosophy of art, and I mentioned Aphrodite, and I said a rose in the world of Aphrodite may well be different to a rose in the world of Dionysus or Apollo or whoever else.
Yeah.
And when that world comes, you get both the rose in that world, and the world that you are then in. So
yes.
There's this piece about that unfolding, that opening with the attention, and with the opening of it's not the opening of doors so they can come in, it's the opening of our awareness to their presence.
Yes. It's an expansion. It's it's like the ocean, right? The ocean is as far as you can see. It ends, but you don't really have a sense of that it just keeps going. And I think that works for me a lot. The idea that love is as expansive as you can track it, and as you can understand it from where you are. Because that is a thing. We're all in context, and we're all in history, and we're all in story. So I see things one way and somebody else sees them the other. And thank goodness, I would actually really love to have some sort of, I don't know what the word is, but some sort of collective that we all come together and say, who is Aphrodite to you?
Yeah.
Because I have called her in the past like a mirror ball, and that she sort of reflects out different things to different people. And so because we all reflect different things.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely spot on with any deity.
Right, exactly.
One of the pieces that we work with, that you might have seen me working with within the Crimson Craft. So I am specifically, I specifically work with specific individual deities, personally, and am devoted to a few of them, and married to some others because fairy initiation. But one of the deities that I work with is Freya. Like, specifically,
Hmm.
explicitly devoted to, committed to, and have been for a
Nice.
very long time. And I forget
Sure.
sometimes, and she reminds
Sure.
me. She turns up and she's like, "Hello."
Yes, absolutely. She does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of the ways in which I work with this current within the Crimson Craft and the Crimson Coven space, so that practice, is by because not everyone has the same relationships with the same deity. So there's space there
Yep.
for
Mhm.
the goddesses and the gods and the gods, the
Mhm.
bright spirits, the mysterious ones,
Mhm.
the divine beings that hold those currents.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so I think of Aphrodite and of Freya as kind of
Mhm.
descendants and inheritors of the currents that also Inanna, Ishtar,
Yep.
and Venus as well, and then
Yep.
Babylon down the line
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
a more relatively recent. So this is, I kind
Mhm.
of describe them under the archetype of the red goddess,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is red not in color, but red as in passion.
Yes. Mhm. I feel that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this to me kind of, the more you look at the stories and the personalities and the
Mhm.
energies that each one of these, specifically talking about the goddesses now, each
Mhm.
one of them carry, it's more about the word that encompasses them, to me, seems to be more about passion than about
Mhm.
just what we describe as love,
Right.
even though love
Mhm.
is, you can use it in the broader sense.
There. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'd love to hear you talk a bit about your
Mhm.
experiences of Aphrodite in
Mhm.
that as the goddess of passion and holding all of those different pieces.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, she's, like I said, what a mirror ball, right? She is, love's a big thing. Love is also a big question, and it can be a great motivator. And so when I think of all that, I think of passion. I think of passion also in the Pearl Pentacle, and the way that I hold that as being passion to me is what gets you up in the morning. And that's
Mm.
Aphrodite to me. The idea of something that calls me forward and that creates like anticipation for me, that creates energy for me. Passion is a big word that, a lot of folks will have different definitions for it, but for me, it is the place where she sits with me and says, you are worthy of this. You are worthy of loving
Mm.
something so much. You are someone who deserves that. You too can have the things that you love, even if nobody understands that. And you can go for those things. And I will support you in that. And I will sit with you in that. And I will sit with you in the moments where you forget that you do deserve that. I think of the one story in which, the whole story about her and Psyche, right? And there are a lot of different ways to interpret that. But one of the things that I'm curious about, because I'm like this, and I think that all the stories, while there's consistencies about them, also they were translated by a lot of white guys. And so I have questions. But, anyways, so part of that, we could say that she is the initiator in that because she challenges Psyche and sort of like puts her through her paces. But we could also say that she
Mm.
really wanted her son to wanted Psyche to be like the person for her son, right? And like really wanted her to show the passion for getting through all of this and the drive for that and the passion for this love that did exist, that was unexpected. Although if you read any Greek story, was it really that unexpected to like that was going to happen? Um, yeah, so those are some of the ways. Oh, I love the Greeks. Love the Greeks. They are a hot mess, and I love it. But I think that that's the main thing, because if I really personalize it for myself, it's about like knowing my worthiness for something that is calling me forward. And
Mm.
that's tough work for me. If there's initiatory work, that would be it. And it is ongoing work to continuously re-arrive at myself and kind of go, nope, you can hold this. You can hold this too. Yeah, that's we're working on it still.
Yeah, like that, knowing your worth
Mhm.
is that is something that these ladies absolutely do.
Yeah, there's no question. It's just, they just show up and do the thing, right? There isn't like, at least we don't see it. There's not this like so intensely human experience of, I don't know if I should do this. Am I doing it the right way? Is this going to piss somebody off? Da, 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 da. There's not that, right? There is not the having feelings about feeling. There is the go forth and do, go forth and have, and go forth and know that that was always yours to begin with.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a piece in your book,
Mm-hmm.
Aphrodite, that
Mm-hmm.
you describe the stories and getting to know her through the stories, and you say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you could interpret these in that she's jealous and petty and this, that, and the other, but I think the way you phrased it was something like, but I see a goddess whose heart wants to be held and seen and loved.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
she knows what she wants, and she knows that
Mm-hmm.
she is worthy of being held
Mm-hmm.
and seen and loved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she, like, just to riff off that, like when she
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
jealous rage, actually
Mm-hmm.
she's responding to that, no, this is what I deserve and this is what should be
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Yes. That part that shows up in a lot of the translations of that story, where her Psyche arrives as this incredibly gorgeous, everybody's flocking to see her, and that Aphrodite's temples are left in disrepair.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times you skip over that part because you're so worried about Psyche. But like, think about a goddess that has been revered for however long.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, no one is worshiping her.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, no one is tending things. I can imagine that would tick me off if I was in that situation. And I might have a few reactions here or there. That seems completely reasonable. It doesn't seem like a power trip. It doesn't seem like it seems like a god who has been in this place for a while and was created for this purpose. And then suddenly some human walks through and she's forgotten. I think the stories of Aphrodite, I do approach them like that because I want to see these two as, I want to see her, me, you, everybody as being having big emotions about things, because you do, because love is weird, because life is weird, because interacting with people is strange and awful sometimes. Getting jealous is completely understandable and not a bad thing. Getting mad is actually not often a bad thing. It actually alerts us to what isn't working and what, points us in the direction of where we might go next, or who we don't want to be with, or what we don't want to do. But like all of her things, even in her like scheming to like get different things, it's coming out of a reaction for wanting to be loved well, with her affair with Ares, and the other stories of, the way that she sort of gets all the things with war and, knows how to talk to Paris, right? And that is her knowing what people desire and what's important to them.
Yes. And I'm just thinking about, like, psyche now is the word for the soul.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's this moment where everyone's attention moved away from love
Mm-hmm.
and towards the soul, which is
Mm-hmm.
not valuable, but it was an untested soul.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I
So
think that
love was
is, mm-hmm.
calling the soul back to, it's like, okay, strengthen yourself,
Yes.
show yourself, walk through those gates, return to love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is the great question, right? It's the great challenge or the great dare. Return to love. Return through all of the challenges. Return through all of the things that seem impossible. Return through all of the ways in which this shouldn't work. And, do the thing where you get the box, and in every, Greek story, like, don't open it. Well, I'm going to open it. And, do those things too. I do the things you're not supposed to do. And yet, you can still return to love. And I don't want that to sound like, too binary and sort of like the rom-com sort of situation. but like love is not just one person. It's not just one predicament, right? It's returning to love because it's everywhere.
Yeah. It's that I describe it as like divine love is that force, that energy that brings everything together.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. I
if
mean,
it's
it's
going to be
the,
anything, it's got to be that.
absolutely. It is like, it's so intertwined with passion. Like we moved away from that, but that's absolutely where it is, right? What is the thing that wakes me up in the morning? Like, I think it's just to go back to and repeat, because I'm going to repeat this, the idea that overculture really, creates love to look in a certain way. And so it's always sort of feels, or not always, but often feels like it's out of reach, or that it's, if it doesn't look like this, then it's not true love. And here are the 10 signs for true love and all this stuff. And that's really exasperating to me. But I think that love is omnipresent. It is probably one of the reasons why I can often remember that we're not alone in this world, because love is everywhere, and it is in and out and around and below and above and all the things. It is looking around this room and seeing things that remind me of love, even though it's just a picture.
Yeah.
Or it's the fact that my cat's litter box is clean, right? As simple as that too.
Yeah. There's that piece, isn't there, about the way in which the overculture separates us from ourselves and from our souls, our inherent natures, our bodies, love. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the point at which they can then offer up this consumable version, to use the word you used earlier, that then we then go, okay, yes, please, because we know we're missing something.
Mm-hmm. It is, yeah, it becomes a very like, if it's the thing that everybody wants in some way, that is ripe for being something that is also really easy to be manipulated into or to be sold. So I think that
Absolutely.
that's why the divine relationship becomes so important. Like, how do you expand out into more than a thing and more into, like I say, relationship or experience?
Okay, so for our listeners, so I'm assuming there are listeners here currently, but there will be listeners in the
Or there will
future.
be.
Hello.
Hello.
And I'm always open to more suggestions as well. What would Okay, two-part question,
Great.
because always. Um, what would you, if someone came to you and said, I want to deepen my relationship with divine love and Aphrodite, and with Aphrodite as initiator and all of the aspects initiator into that space, what would you recommend as a starting point?
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about consistency, and I agree
Yeah.
that this is important, but consistency can be really difficult when you are ADHD or yeah
Mm-hmm.
or if you have a life that is inconsistent. Like
Yep.
I know you do, I do travel quite a bit, so there's all these different
Mm-hmm.
places. So where would you start for a relationship, and how do you build in
Mm-hmm.
consistency in an inconsistent life?
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are great questions, and saw that coming. Because it is a good question. How the heck do we do this? So in terms of starting to tap into divine love or working with Aphrodite as that, or anything that's even slightly smells of that, I would start with making space for it. I think that would be the first thing. And when I say making space for it, there are a couple different things that I think of. The first thing I think of is creating some sort of physical space for it in your life. So that can be an altar, it can be a piece of jewelry, it can be a piece of clothing. So some sort of thing that creates a space that you can either touch, turn to, things like that. I think that it allows your attention to be always slightly on that, because you've created a space. So if you decide to work with Aphrodite, she likes a lot of spaces, like a lot of spaces. She likes to have altars and pretty things and all of that. And those spaces can then become the places of offering and interaction, but also just beginning with just a simple, like, even if you're not a person that can put a bunch of stuff out or anything like that, having a shell somewhere, having a piece of rose quartz somewhere, having a picture of a heart somewhere, right? Anything that allows you to have a space where this lives. And to talk about consistent, just to edge into that, having it be something that can come with you is always nice. Or having your screensaver on your phone be something that reminds you of love, that is Aphrodite, whatever. There's a lot of different ways to just have one space or several where you can just, your attention gets to be there too. But start there and then see how that arrives, because sometimes that will inform what happens next versus being like, okay, first you do this and then you do this, because I don't think any relationship is like that. So I wouldn't do it for deities either, right? I know I outline stuff in my books that talk like that, but you know, you got to start somewhere. You don't skip the steps. You don't have to go around. So in terms of creating consistency, I also have ADHD and it's great. It is something that actually is a really great, it's been a gift. It has been one of my greatest learnings with Aphrodite actually is to have compassion for that. Because if I am to love myself, then I have to have compassion for those pieces too. I have to be like, okay, this is also a part of me. It is not something to, you know, criticize or feel badly about. This is also a part of me. So I do believe that relationships in general require consistency. And so for consistency with deities, having that physical space can be that, and that it is something that you return to, even if it's just a quick passing glance when you're leaving the door. Or consistency can also look like I do something every day that taps me into this relationship. It doesn't have to be the same thing. I don't think so. I think that it can be, absolutely. I mean, my relationship with Aphrodite is, you know, kind of what feels good today. And sometimes it is burning a little incense. Some days it is, you know, putting some oil on a statue. Some days it is waving and going like, see you later. I'm going to do a presentation with you later on. And so I think that this is going to count as my daily practice today. And, you know, thinking about that, getting tattoos, you know, things like that, I think those are also ways to connect in and be consistent. I think that, again, this is one of those things where we're like, oh, we have a shared definition of what consistent means. Well, I don't think I do. Consistent isn't the same. It is coming back again and again. And so that can be
Yes.
every other day. It doesn't have to be every day at 10 a.m., right? It can be coming back and returning to the thing that is important.
Yeah. So often people talk about daily practice.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of
Mhm.
touching base with your magic on a daily basis, but I'm
Yep.
not a big fan of the phrase daily practice
I
because
know.
it
It's
makes
hard.
it sound like you have to like get up at 5 a.m. when the sun is breaking over the horizon and sit on the meditation cushion for an hour doing like it sounds like something really strict and really prescriptive, and my brain just does not like that.
No, it also
Yeah.
sets you up for failing,
Yeah.
right? And I don't think that's the point of it. The
No.
point is the returning to what you're focusing on, or returning to a place in which you can remember yourself. Like that's
Yeah.
the way I often hold daily practice. Like if it's not deity focused, that this is the anchor that I can come back to. This is, if everything
Yeah.
else is screwy, at least this is the thing that I know what it is. I know what it looks like. I know what it often feels like.
Yes. And on that note, like if getting up at the crack of dawn and sitting on a meditation cushion for an hour every day
Mhm.
is right for you,
Mhm.
then
Great.
that's also good and valid.
Mhm.
I'm
Absolutely.
not dissing it by any means.
No, oh,
Yeah,
not at all. I mean, I love hearing about other people's practices because I just
yeah,
think and I also think that I know you've probably heard this before, but for folks who might not have, it's daily practice. It's not daily like you have to do it all the time, right? It's a practice. It is not a
yeah,
perfection. It is a thing that hopefully, I mean, in most cases, you're choosing to do.
Yeah. It's then, and practice again, it's an activity, it's a doing,
Right.
it's an
Absolutely.
engagement. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a relationship building thing. It's in a lot of psychology and therapy sort of scenarios, they talk about, the way that you show up for yourself allows you to build self-trust. And so doing one small thing every day allows you to continuously cultivate trust in yourself. So even one sip of water, it seems small, but your body and your brain and your heart understand that this is something you've committed to and you've done it. And okay, so the next time my body needs something or my mind needs something, I know that I am a trustworthy person and I have integrity because I do what I say I'm going to do. And again, that can look different every day, but if people do want to do something daily, like start something incredibly small.
Tiny,
Like you
tiny things.
can't not do it, right?
Yeah. And I agree totally. There was that thing about consistency, and you're like, consistency, we don't necessarily have a shared definition of that. Different people have different ideas. And finding the consistency that works with your body, heart, mind, relationship is key. And I remember having I had a lot of difficulty with the concept of consistency. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
talking to my gods and going, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
sorry. I wish I was
Mm-hmm.
more consistent and I just can't manage it. And the response I got back was, but you are consistent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You consistently come back. You consistently, over the years, absolutely consistently make this a priority.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, one of my things with any sort of deity practice is that, I'm not in supplication, like I'm in devotion and in relationship. And to me, that gives a lot of space for and flexibility for who I am in that.
Yeah. I'd love to I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what devotion means and what being a devotee means to you.
Yeah, that changes too. We don't all have shared definitions in that. I think being devoted is, I think the way that I say it in this moment is
Mm.
that devotion to me implies that you have a stake in what's happening, that devotion is something that is sacred. It's something that you hold to be sacred. So to be in devotion to Aphrodite or whatever is that this is something that I hold sacred. It is something that
Mm.
I am like, I don't want to say bought into, that's the phrase that's coming right now, but that I am attached to, that it is something that I do for and celebrate. And the devotion can also, those words can mean a whole bunch of things depending on who you're working with, right? But for me,
Yeah.
it's about the holiness and the sacredness and it is an interaction for folks. I think so many times devotion can look like, and like looking up at, the deity and sort of being in awe. And I think that's can be yours too. But for me, it's more about the sacredness of it. And it's more about the idea that this is not just any relationship. This is something that is integral to who I am becoming. And I don't know if I don't know if I say devotee to Aphrodite. Sometimes I do. Like that word is, I think I had questions about it because I was actually teaching something and someone said, oh, I hold that as to be like somebody who's, sort of on the outside and
Mm.
sort of like watching while being a priestess is being more active. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought of it like that. And then, so it's sort of jumbling around in my brain a little bit. So I think I might be, stay tuned, come back and might say something else. But I also know that it's something that's recognizable and people kind of get what that means. And I do say I'm in devotion to God. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
all the different labels and language is really tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because it means different things to different people, partly because each piece conjures up very specific, or can conjure up very specific stereotypes or ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them are quite right. when you're
We're
in active relationship outside of a set structure.
right. And we're all individuals. And I think that, again, I will always go back to this, especially with Aphrodite. I want to really stay away from anything that sounds like if you don't do it this way, you're doing it wrong. Because when I hear devotee and even initiate and things like that, I hear, oh, there's a certain rules to which we're going to follow. And maybe you do for yourself, but I don't for other people. Do what you want to do. I think that's probably where it gets a little wiggly for me. Like I empower folks, hopefully, to do what is right for you. Hopefully.
Sorry, what was that last bit? You are.
I want to empower folks to do what works for them, and hopefully, or at least encourage that, because I think every relationship is unique. I won't tell you what your relationship looks like. Not at all. In my book, I'm very clear of here's some correspondences, but do what you want. Because I think it's always good to have a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why in Gods and Goddesses of Wales, I was very specific about going, these are the stories. This is the story told in sort of easy to read language with the facts as accurate to the text. And then so that you can see where I'm getting the description of the deity from. So here is a story, here's a description of the deity, here are their attributes, and you can see where those attributes come from in the story. And here, because it's and these are suggestions for starting a relationship.
Right.
And I want to show this is where I've gotten this from, because otherwise if you can just be pulling it out of the ether, and that might work for you. But then which being are you putting people in touch with?
Yeah, I mean, the internet is a vast place of a whole bunch of information. And
Yes.
and I think that I think it's good to have some foundation in source texts or things that seem to be consistent. But to be fair, I'm sure people have. I had somebody in one of my classes once talk about a very specific actress that they felt was who Aphrodite was to them. Great, fantastic. That's just the way they showed up. So I think there's space for that too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, love is uncontained. I think, it's very big. And I don't think us little humans are actually all that good at being well, this is what it is. And that's what it can only be. I mean, well, we are very good at that, but I don't think we should be. So I think we should let that go. Really. I think that gets us in a lot of trouble. So,
yeah. And this is, I suppose, where we've got all the different epithets for Aphrodite, all the different titles. They're naming different relationships and different aspects of the mirror ball.
Yes, different locations, different things that were important or that wanted to be revered, or things that particular culture needed. You needed the Aphrodite that was the one of the calm seas, or the one that was helpful for sailors, and you needed the one for war. So you need to see your deity also reflect what you need or offer what you need, I think. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a piece in there. So I've been reading is it Venus and Aphrodite, History of a Goddess, Bethany Hughes, if people have seen it, it's that one. And I haven't quite finished it, but it's a fascinating sort of overview. And one of the things that I love in there, there's that word again, is the way in which she sort of roots back and kind of follows okay, this is probably the roots of Aphrodite, and this is how she evolved over time, and how she still manifested and as Venus, as in aspects of Mary. As much as people wanted to go, no pagan deities here, her power still came through, because of course it did.
Of course. I mean, you can't, I believe, or I think I've said enough times to believe that, I think of love as the first magic. I think of love as being, one of the driving forces of creation. We think of, Star Goddess story, and we think of other stories that love often factors into those. And I also think of the time of, some of those creation myths that talk about chaos, like love was born out of that. So obviously it's going to be bigger. Obviously it's going to evolve, because that is what happens. It is not something that you even need to say. It will evolve. It will move through time and transform and change and show up in pop songs and, show up at, when I was teaching at a camp where we did an Aphrodite story, or not really a story, but an Aphrodite experience, things showed up differently, because she is not a gender. She is a force. She is not one story. She is a collection of interactions and relationships and responses, and maybe bad decisions, depends who you ask. I say that Aphrodite is not a definition, she's an experience. She's not something to be contained. And a lot of gods aren't, I would say. I mean, for better or for worse, but I think that that's true.
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. I'm going to just open up. I closed it to try and help with my internet. I'm going to just open up the YouTube page and see if there were any comments on there.
Comments, questions, concerns.
And I'm hoping it's streamed without a lot of the buffering.
Great.
So if there's any questions or comments on the live stream, let's see. Oh, okay. So there's a couple of things. I'll read them to you. Thank you, people, for joining. I see a couple of people I know and a couple of people I don't. So it's lovely to see you on here. So I feel both very called out and very supported about the whole consistency and daily practice thing. I think it's more common than people admit. I absolutely agree. This is one of the reasons I asked that, was because, it comes up a lot. People are like, how do you do this? I'm like, you don't, you're human.
Imperfectly.
Yeah. And someone here is talking about, I prefer to go on my feelings and intuition. I'm not quite sure what that was in relation to, but yeah, like that's in all of these things going on, how your feelings, your intuition, your relationship to it, I think is quite important.
Absolutely. And so here's the thing with that. And I think what I see often is folks not wanting to cling to one definition, because in order to sort of step out of that and create your own thing, you also have to have a lot of self-trust.
Sorry, I'm going to have to close that again because you're glitching, which is not your fault. That's mine.
Oh, good.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Okay. So one of the things I think that's tricky is that a lot of folks I notice want to have like one definition for a deity, because that's really easy. Because when I say, oh, just follow your intuition or follow your feelings and see what works for you, that's a really big, scary mess. It is, because it could be anything, right? And what if I get it wrong? Well, is there wrong? I'm not sure. So I think really at another foundational part of this is being able to trust yourself to know what is right for you. And that is also magical work. And that is also a really great, I think, argument for daily practice again, or like a practice, consistency and learning to trust yourself, and learning that you will show up again and again, and that you will be able to identify what is right for you.
Yeah. And that consistency. And it was like you were saying, the tiny act, saying, I will do this every day, and doing that tiny thing every day, building that trust, but also having that relationship with yourself, and with that aspect of yourself that is already connected to love, to the initiator, to inspiration.
Absolutely. I think we all have this, right? And we do at some level. Maybe it's not these words, and maybe it's not the experience that I talk about, or not yet. But just like I think, love spells emerge and change. So do we. And so we should. We want different things. We are different people.
Yeah. And our relationships are going to be different, and they need to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So while I've got you here,
Mm-hmm.
then, the other piece that we haven't really talked about too much in this is inspiration.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So please
Unpack that. Okay.
unpack that. There you go. Aphrodite
Unpack.
as inspiration.
Well, so again, I'm going to talk. Once upon a time, there was love, right? And love inspires people to do a whole bunch of things. I know that when we say inspiration, we often think of the grand, beautiful, whatever. Inspiration doesn't always get us to do that. But when I think of Aphrodite and I think of inspiration, I think of beauty. I actually think of, and not in just the typical like physical beauty or whatever the standard is today. I think of things that make us feel, things that make us know that something is special to us or evoke some experience in us. And that inspires us to seek that out. It inspires us to act in different ways. I think of, inspiration also as poetry and song and story. And I don't know, just the things that bring us back to or into or create, the images or stories of love's mysteries and love's memories. All of these things are intertwined. And so this can feel like kind of a soup. And I love that, or an ocean, if you will. All of this, she inspires for me, or taps into my inspiration by reminding me that I am this well of desire. I can be inspired in a moment to feel something towards this person or that thing. She reminds me that desire is not this finite thing. I can be inspired 100 times and then move on to something else. I think that there's something too about the fact that Aphrodite allows me, at least, to know myself in this moment, but also to know that I could be something else, that I could also shift and change, that I can know that I am worthy of something else, know that I am deserving of something else, and possibly just like sort of push me in the direction of that knowing and push me in that direction of what my heart wants in that moment, and allow me to know what the right act is in that moment, or maybe not the right act, maybe just do something. And then from there, you'll figure out what the right thing is, whatever right means. But, I feel like, I think I called this like an inspiration and initiator, also instigator. And I mean that in the best way possible. I mean that in the, I'm having feelings, I'm going to act on that, right? I'm inspired on how I'm going to act on that. I love that. There's a joy for me in Aphrodite. And I think one of the, it's so easy for me to get really serious about it. But actually the way she shows up to me is often this joyful, loving, not childlike, but just more of like an energetic, everything is beautiful and wondrous. And can you see it? Aren't you inspired to act on that? Aren't you inspired to like dance and move your body and feel someone else's and all of that stuff? That's the way I experience her. It's so easy to sort of picture her as like, something a little bit more solemn and that too. But I experience her as the instigator of a whole bunch of fun things. And in that inspiration, we get so many opportunities to know our vulnerability, to know our authenticity, or to bump up against it, maybe. I think that is all part of it too. Like she inspires us to do more because she knows how wide love is. She understands how wide it could be for us, and that we think our little hearts are so teeny, but they're not.
Yeah.
They are expansive, and, however long this life is for us, why not go find what heart, love, inspiration, initiation means to you and follow that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's that I love what you're saying about the invitation to curiosity and wonder and delight.
Yes.
Because that's
Over and over.
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. So you mentioned beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I find something beautiful, and I find so many things
Mhm.
beautiful every day, it
Yes.
feels like my heart is cracking open with the
Yes.
love for the world.
Mhm. And we need that.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of the things that I talk about with her when I start to like angle into like activism with her, because I feel like that's really important. Like we need to know that beauty exists in this world for however we define that. Another word that's, doesn't really have a definition, because there is no one beauty.
Mm.
I mean, uh, if we can know beauty, we can know that there is something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
We can know that there is something to hope towards, because we know there is something that lights us up and sings our song and does the thing that allows us to know possibly what the next right step is, or what our passion is, or what's important.
Yeah.
Because without beauty, I really feel like beauty and hope are sort of, intertwined. I need to know that I need that in order to continuously get up and know that what I'm doing is not like what I'm doing is the right thing, because I do believe that, but I think it just can reinvigorate us when you get tired, and reinvigorate you when you see all the other stuff that, the news wants to tell us, or that social media wants to shove in your face. There's beauty too. And it can be as simple as the way that my lip gloss is laying on my desk right now, right? It doesn't have to be what the magazines tell us it is, and what we're supposed to buy.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Woot woot. Uh-huh. Yeah. But that's a tricky balance, actually, like living in the world where that is like we've got to participate in order to survive. um
Yes.
it's
Darn it.
very tricky to opt out. I know a couple of people who have kind of, but
Mm-hmm.
they either are physically enough in themselves that they can
Mm-hmm.
cope, or
Mm-hmm.
financially quite well off, so they were able to set themselves up, um,
Mm-hmm.
generally for the most part.
Absolutely. But I think that, one of the great practices with Aphrodite is to do that, like noticing of beauty. There is, I can't remember, I'm something I saw on TikTok, of course, and somebody was taking pictures every time they felt happy.
Mm,
So they would take a picture of where they were or what they were doing, right? And it was a whole bunch of random stuff. And so I wonder if you could like do something like that, even if you don't have a camera to do it. You could just like take a picture in that moment in your head of like, this is what beauty looks like today.
yeah.
This is what arrives for me today. Or I take a bunch of selfies because I think that is also helpful for me. Like, this is my face after I teach.
Mm,
This is what is coming through me when I see some gorgeous rose or some gorgeous cloudy sky. And those moments of continuing to return to beauty is also really building the muscle for returning to hope, returning to love, for returning to the things that are bigger than all of the stuff that we unwillingly, a lot of the times, opt into.
yeah. My phone camera reel is absolutely rammed with photos of sunsets, of the moon, of flowers, of light through
Mm-hmm.
tree leaves, of
Yes.
interesting shapes in the roofs in the places that I've been
Yes.
through, and my partner
Mm-hmm.
when he's not paying attention to me, because
Yes.
like I'm like, yay, this person
Mm-hmm.
makes me happy. Yeah.
Exactly. I think I mean, why not use a tool that's sort of meant, I think, a little bit to distract us, and
Mm,
use it to collect beauty, and use it to collect things that really fill you up
yeah.
and allow you to remain in devotion to the things that are important for you.
We went for a walk for our anniversary
Mhm.
in a bluebell wood, so where the
Mm.
carpeted with bluebells, except the
Yeah,
bluebells had just turned over,
right.
so you could see a few of them scattered through.
Mm.
And I was just sort of getting my camera out, like my phone camera out constantly, and I
Mhm.
realized that what I was doing
Mm.
was using just like a painter would, but on a sort of quicker basis, to kind of examine the world and
Mm-hmm.
frame it and go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
how,
Yes.
if I look at it this way, in this light, and
Mm-hmm.
to experience the world through that kind of framing process. And it was
Yeah.
really interesting to go, oh,
Mhm.
this isn't just me being distracted by like collecting stuff for Instagram,
Right. Right.
all food for the gram. Um,
Right. Mm-hmm.
yeah, as one of my ritualist friends said.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like a way in which I'm exploring a window and a perspective on the world that if I wasn't stopping to do this, I'd be looking at different things. And it
Yep.
wouldn't necessarily be bad, it would just be different.
Mm-mm. Yep, exactly. I think that there's, yeah, constant opportunities to shift to something different and being willing to, um, pay attention. And like we said in the beginning, make space for love, make space for beauty, make space for those moments where you can tap into like divinity, even if you don't call it Aphrodite, even if you call it something else. It is, the whole life is a love spell. Life, all of this is a part of it. How can we pay attention to it? How can we engage in it? How can we say, oh, you matter? Because really, in the end, we're saying, I matter and I pay attention and I'm engaged with myself.
Mm. And there's that piece about self-compassion in there, in
Yes.
the not going, oh no, I'm being such a millennial, I'm distracted by my
Oh, dear.
phone, and going,
Right.
no, actually, I'm recognizing and
Mhm.
reframing it for myself
Yeah.
as no, I'm
Mhm.
seeking and collecting beauty. Um,
Yes.
and that
Mm.
that self-compassion for the way in which we're engaging in the world from the place that we are in now,
Yes.
whatever that
Mhm.
is, always
Mhm.
imperfect because we're human,
Yes. And we
but
are
always
not
love.
shooting for perfection. No.
No,
Mhm.
just
So,
love.
yes, just love. And that is lovely and messy and unpredictable and unreasonable. So
Yeah,
often.
often I think that's a beautiful place to end, actually, to start to wrap up. So was there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only other thing that really has been born out of my work with Aphrodite or working with life as a love spell or any of that is this idea of heart magic. And
Mm.
it is this idea of, I have a whole outline of a book for this. And so it's all about looking at the ways we can devote to ourselves. And I say self devotion as opposed to self care, because again, like we
Hmm.
said in our earlier definition, there's something at stake. Self care can sometimes seem like such a removed phrase for me
Yeah.
and a co opted phrase. It's fine. If you use it, it's absolutely fine. But I'm like wondering about self devotion. And I think that also offers more than just things that we do, it's also ways that we are with ourselves.
Mm.
And so for me, it's self devotion, but also devotion to something that you understand as divine. It doesn't have to be a deity, right? It could be the ocean, which, is great. So working with that, but building that foundation for you, building that foundation with something divine. And then also it's about devotion to outside. So community, your surroundings, things like that. This idea that all of this works together to support ourselves and to support everyone around us. And that is a magic that can be understood through the way the heart works, the way
Mm.
that it moves through the different chambers, the ways that the heart activates our life force and our life through electricity, through muscle, through cleansing, through nourishing, through all of the different things. So there's a lot to be thought of when a long time ago, I had a condition in which they had to stop my heart, and they had to do it a couple of times, and it didn't work. And so I have always thought about the heart as being this thing that it's not actually unstoppable, but in that moment it was. And so that's where that comes from. When that happened, and when I've had a lot of heartbreak in my life, the first thing I said was, I need to know more about the heart. And I
Mm.
looked at the actual heart, but also these other things that support around that and through that. So that's something that's emerging. You'll see more of that. I already talk a lot about it, but that's going to emerge in different ways in the future, I imagine. I hope it will.
Yeah.
because it's really important to me. And Aphrodite is a part of that. And other deities can be too. It doesn't have to be a one-person party. It can be multiple people. So, but that's something I just think of in terms of this world and activism and how I, show up for myself and show up for others and show up for that which is wider possibly and more wise and able to see a wider perspective.
You say it doesn't have to be a one-person party. I checked in with Freya and went, but I'm working with all of these other, and she's like, that's fine. I'm like not possessive. It's like, well, no, that's true. And she's like, and of course, as soon as you connect with me and the lineage that I carry, then you are going to be working with all of the others that also carry this lineage in one way, shape, or form. And I've certainly found that to be true.
Yeah, Freya's on my outline too. So with Aphrodite. So
yeah.
Of course she is. Of course she is.
Yeah.
Freya was one of my first ones. So yeah, we're friends, but we're not actively doing stuff these days. But,
Yeah, that's lovely. That makes a lot of sense. And that's that shifting of relationships, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. They don't all work all the time. Some of them are like, the acquaintances that you wave to once in a while. And, sometimes you text to see how they're doing. Right. And then there are other folks that you text every day. So I think that that's the thing I like to lead these conversations with about Aphrodite is like about relationship and about not thinking that relationship with deity or with divine has to look anything different from your human relationships. Like, how do you do those well? And also, where do you not do those well? Because that's informative too.
One day I will tell you the story of how I got a text message from a goddess. Literal on my phone, signed goddess's name.
Cannot wait.
So
to be continued.
To be continued. And on that note, I think that's beautiful. Like that relationship. So to kind of encapsulate what we've been talking about, it's that Aphrodite as love, as vaster and greater than the consumable version that gets packaged up to us, as containing more than any one thing. Inspiration as inspiration that is desire that drives us towards, that moves us to act, and moves us to act from the heart and towards the heart. And relationship with deity as being relationship.
Yes. Yeah. And all of this together is an initiation. It is a stepping from where I am to where I want to be. It is an initiation into things that I need that I didn't know that I needed. It is a stepping into a place where I can't go back to where I was. So what do I do now?
And knowing that you are worthy of it.
Yep. The whole time.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you.
And for handling the technical whatever was going on with such grace and compassion.
I once taught a class where I was one of the teachers and I cast the circle and Zoom kicked me out and wouldn't let me back in. So I've been there. It looked really great on the other side, but it was very frustrating as a teacher.
Yeah. So people can find you and all your work on your website.
That is the best place. I have, it's irisanyamoon.com. And if you do irisanya.com, I think you'll get there too. And I have a monthly-ish newsletter. And I also have a Substack that I actually am trying to move towards. There are on my website, there's classes and books and all of that. I sell my books through my website. You can also get them at all the places that you can get books. And I'm doing a lot of Aphrodite work coming up this year, so stay tuned for that. It is listed on my website. I'm also helping a group out by leading some stuff in Greece, with other goddesses too, but Aphrodite. So that's coming up too, but everything's on my website. I am sort of like going into this new phase of teaching with how can Aphrodite be here too? And so if that sounds interesting, come along for the ride. I'm very excited about it.
Well, I love following you on social media, and like the monthly newsletter sort of appears, and it's just the stuff that you share just to encourage people to go and find Irisanya Moon, follow Irisanya Moon, actually look at this stuff, because each piece you write about grief, you write about love, you write about all the whole range of human experience, and each piece that you write is a piece of each piece is a work of beauty, and it cracks the heart open and takes you deeper into both the emotion and the energy of it, and into your own self and your own experience. So even just the posts that you put up on Instagram or on Facebook, like, have that touch of magic, that touch of love.
Yeah. Mondays, I always post a Monday heart check-in, and it's often a quote or a poem from me and some little stuff that I write. I write it out of places of inspiration. I don't really have plans. I don't have it all mapped out. It just sort of happens. But that's one of my favorite things. And also get to see pictures of my cats and things like that sometimes, and lots of flowers, usually.
Yeah.
Lots of flowers.
And likewise, if this has inspired you, sorry,
just nodding.
just nodding. Okay. And if this has inspired you, we have around about once a month, the Crimson Coven hosts and by that I mean I host a guest speaker, and we have a conversation around topics about divine love, sacred sexuality, and embodied magic, hence Aphrodite, and inviting Irisanya here. I love sharing other people's work, and introducing you to other people. So like, this is one of the reasons for this and for making it public. But within the Crimson Coven Collective, which is a private Facebook group, I do almost weekly live streams, which you can join, where and then the recordings stay up in the group, where I'll talk for 15-20 minutes on a related topic, and then generally run a meditation or an energy exercise. And people can put comments and questions in while we're doing that, and then that informs, either I respond to it there or it informs what I do next. So it's all very much led and built by the community. So that's what that space is for. So if people would like to join, then you can find information about it and links to it on haloquin.net, and find the Crimson Coven. In the description below this video, you can find links to Irisanya's website, Substack, mailing list, and social media things. So go follow, support, and do check out Irisanya's lovely book, Aphrodite, and others, and upcoming like Artemis and the Norns.
Yeah, so the ones that are coming out next are, the Norns is coming out in August. Norns, Weavers of Fate and Magic. And in November is Gaia, which is saving ourselves. And Artemis is March or April of 2024. And Goddess of the Wild Hunt and Sovereign Heart, I think.
Yeah,
Can't remember
that
offhand.
sounds about right.
Something like that. That sounds right.
Yeah,
and I'm also writing 2 other books about other deities. So I'll let you know on a secret, Circe and Hestia. So that's next.
That's very exciting. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Halo. Thank you so much.
I'm going to just. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, who managed to find us on the weird live stream. I am going to change how I do the tech next time, so that's just, let's not make it complicated. So if you want these happen again, join the Crimson Coven Collective, join my mailing list. I let people know at the beginning of each, or some point in each month, when things are coming up, or just hit subscribe, like and subscribe, and all the buttons on the YouTubes, and you'll get notifications when they come up. And also when I start to share my music, because I've just sent 2 tracks off to be mastered that are based on a ritual of to the goddesses of passion, based on the Mass of Babylon. So that's very exciting.
Yes, follow all of Halo's things. Amazing. Amazing.
Right. Love all round.
Yeah.
And let's goodbye to the people on the YouTube.
Goodbye to the YouTubers. Have a good day.
Let's stop the recording. Yes, I do want to stop the recording.